There we go.
Well, they're not here yet, so maybe we can get some of our other stuff in. Javier added something to the agenda at the last minute about, he's meeting right now with, some dam evaluation people. Wanted them to come to this meeting.
For engineers.
No, Kurt and Profit is the.
They're the ones that wrote the EPA plan for Mink Creek.
So, but we were in the middle of doing the exercise that you recommended, so let me get some printouts of findings.
These some of you were talking about that,
Was that?
these.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry, I should have printed out landscape instead of portrait, so it looks a little small. Is anybody on yet, John?
I am trying to hunt on roofs.
So last time we met, you weren't here, I'm glad we weren't here either, but I recommended a very simple process. What we want to create is something like this. A flip chart that is very simple, goes up on a desk, and is your emergency response guide. So somebody, oh, you're here in person, how nice. Lovely.
Are we on recording?
Yes, we already are.
Where would you like me to sit?
Oh, we have.
My left. Yeah, I'm gonna about whoever's beside me. Whoever.
Everyone, this is Ruth. Ruth, this is Brad. And Ruth just joined us recently and had a lot of good commentary last meeting. So this is just a flip chart instead of a big manual.
Okay.
Jack had started a big manual, but I don't know that we have time to finish it.
I'm just waiting on information from other people. Yeah.
Okay, Chief.
Hey, Chief.
So,
Presence is great.
so the goal is to create this as sort of an end game. And it has all the emergency phone numbers, what happens during lockdown. We can title these whatever we want, right? Evacuation procedures, if there's a fire, what does someone like Javier or somebody town staff, CERT teams, what are the roles, who are contacted, who does Javier reach out to? All of this would be in one very simple, organized place.
Okay.
So I'd love to try to get at least a draft of this by the end of the year. Okay, so 2 meetings ago, Clyde recommended a very simple process to go through and do a roundtable of threats, which we did last time. And we had the master threat matrix. And I went through and did, as Clyde, you had recommended, came up with categories of threats. And that's what you have in front of you. So he recommended, and Clyde, you tell me if I'm wrong, if I've misinterpreted anything. But from the incidents that and threats that we identified last time and had already had in the matrix, I pulled them together in these 7 categories. Then today, the plan was to talk about the assets that the town has that can be leveraged in the event that one of these incidents occurs, right? So who are the people, the equipment, the staging areas, whatever we have that can be listed, we would just list it here. And then next meeting, what we hope to do is say, how do we use those assets to respond to the incident, right? So then we have the incidents, the assets that we'll use, and the process by which we would contact this person, send people to this location, route traffic by using CERT teams, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? Did I encapsulate?
Yeah, that's perfect. You did beautifully.
Okay, great. So since this is sort of Clyde works in this area, so I took direction from him on that process. I think if we go through this 3-step process, we'll have enough to generate tabs for this kind of flip chart. So, you know, we would have a category for severe weather. What happens? You would flip. These are the people I need to contact. This is step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then everybody knows who to call, what the rules are, when to trigger the county, if we can't handle it on our own, who to call at the county, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Mhm.
Okay, so that you'll see here from the incidents covered, so this incorporated all of the inputs I took last time from you all and the threat matrix that Jack had already been compiling. And so you'll see in the second column of incident covered, these were sort of the individual threats we had identified in the category that I put them in to the left. So the 7 categories are severe weather, communications failure, supply chain disruption, transportation emergency, community health and safety, infrastructure failure, and community responsiveness. And we talked about adding that in on how we get information out to the community, etc. So, and then I went through my notes and the matrix and just mapped where I thought everything fit. So one thing we could do is just take a quick look, make sure that the incidents covered is fairly complete.
Mhm.
And then we can move on potentially to discussion of assets that we can all think of that we would employ given that category of emergency. Okay,
Okay.
so it's under severe weather, obviously flooding. Yeah, it's at the top of everybody's list right now on the East Coast, right? Ice storm, freeze conditions, high winds, thunderstorms, tornadoes, hail, snow blizzard, solar flares, extreme heat, extreme cold. So these are all under the category of severe weather. Anything that you can think of that I would be missing here?
No, I think this is good. Again, we don't want to be too specific. The
Right.
goal isn't to list everything. The goal is to list general categories that cover most conceivable or all conceivable probable events. And I think you've done that. So a hurricane, we don't need to list a hurricane because a hurricane, I mean, you could if you wanted to, but it has all of these effects. So in other words, it gives you a nice jumping off point for thought exercises on, all right, how do we respond if, for example, we're in North Carolina's situation and the entire area has been devastated? What do we have to work with? What do we have to do? So no, I think it's good.
Yeah, and the only reason I wanted to set up this matrix is because if anybody asks council or otherwise about, well, how did you come up with this kind of thing? I could say, okay, here was our process. And here were the threats categories based on the incidents that we roundtabled, yada, yada, yada. Okay, communication failure, phone outages. I don't know if that's just landline, cellular outages, internet outages. Any others I'm missing in here, Chief, Ruth?
Well, I was gonna say, in phone outages, I don't know if you're aware, but most of your landlines are now on, same sort of functionality as your cell phones.
Oh, really? I
Yes.
did not know that.
So they don't avoid you,
Okay,
so
Yeah,
that's.
you're relying on that fiber that runs down.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
guess
you got
that
a
makes
single
sense.
phone.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Starlink, because of Starlink, what's been happening with North Carolina, Georgia, et cetera, that is a very on point thing right now that we could tap into and finding out information about that.
Yeah,
But of course, they're quite busy right now.
yeah, right. You know, it would be interesting if we found some like lessons learned activities after these, you know, after the disaster has been fully managed, because so if anybody sees anything, I would be interested in attending those. One of the things that I saw a recent post about FEMA coming in. So all of these people have gotten donations and whatnot and sent them into various people, organizations in the town, and FEMA came in. And the woman said, I don't know if this post is true or not, but the woman said FEMA confiscated everything.
They did it.
And so when they took everything, then they said, everybody has to apply. So instead of just being able to hand out, food and necessities, they now had to fill out paperwork in order to get those food and necessities. And here's a community of people that basically wiped out, they have no food, no water, nothing. And the comments that were on this post were ugly, and really ugly.
Which causes residual, and that's also kind of what I came back from a meeting in DC that I was just recently at, that was talking about AI and how AI can be potentially a good thing or be a negative thing. So you have to be very careful on how you vet and verify the information that you're receiving over socials,
Yeah,
and how socials can trick your emotional response to things.
right, yeah, that's a really good point. And one of the things though, in terms of asset discussion that they said, is they said, don't send your supplies to individual people, send them to churches. Because FEMA cannot confiscate things from a church. So the churches were still setting up people in real time. So if you think about churches, I hadn't thought about church being an asset. But in sort of that interim period, I think we should think about churches as the asset. And I don't mean to be disparaging to FEMA. FEMA has their process and they're very good at what they do. But it's also more bureaucratic in a time of crisis when the need is like yesterday.
I can vouch that there are, I won't go into it, but there are major problems at the federal level. Tennessee also had a lot of the types of problems that you described with local or state officials kind of getting out of the bounds of policy and doing things that maybe were not, that they thought were the right way to respond, but perhaps other people perceived that it was not the right way to respond. So there's a lot of those types of problems going on.
A lot of lessons that we will learn from this, and also probably legislation that will be kind of put through because of it.
Right, but I think I would offer to you that the events in North Carolina, as disastrous as they are, proved a timely reminder of the importance of doing some of this planning, because these things can happen to you. In Scottsville, everybody, we all think of flooding, and we don't kind of think of the other things. So this is a great time to just think about things so we become an asset to Chief Jenkins, to the fire department, not a liability.
Right, no, that's a really good point. And these communities, everybody's like, always head to the mountains, it's high ground and floods in this. And the problem was all the roadways washed out at the lower level. So you were trapped in the mountains, and some people are still trapped. They can't get out through that Asheville area anymore. So who would have thought about that? You think flooding, oh, go to high ground. And then you find out all the roads are washed out and you can't get out.
Yeah, or in.
Or in, right,
Right, so
yeah, so the helicopters were having to drop stuff.
Not only that, mules and horses.
Yeah, I saw that, mules. Now,
So-
that's really, and another asset that I would not have thought of is using horses and livestock and whatnot to transport things around, because we're in a rural community, right?
So I think under communications failures, there's something we ought to consider. Some of the assets we have are the existing UHF, VHF communication system. Chief, do you know if the relay here, can we talk just within town assets, your people, the fire, if the relay goes down? And the relay cannot be powered independently and function.
I don't know that question, the answer to that part of the question. But one of the things that I am familiar with is it's a technology called FirstNet.
First
It's
net,
through AT&T. Verizon's got a form of it, but FirstNet will actually link first responders in the geographic area together. But I think there's a subscription fee to it, and I'm not sure what it is. But that might be something, if the fire department's willing to help with it, participate in, to link police and fire emergency services all together, because police, first responders get priority under that system.
and we talked about fuel priorities too, and I don't know if Javier reached out, but I think those kinds of priorities we need to think about.
Well, hang on, let's stay with communications, because I'd like to talk about a few things here. So
Okay.
AT&T's FirstNet relies on their cell phones. So it's a great system, but it's vulnerable. Now, they're supposedly, they made it more resilient, but I don't have the details, but I'll see if there's anything in the DHS realm on that. If your folks can check through the regional side. Does that sound fine?
Well, the only thing I'd be able to do is contact FirstNet or AT&T and find out what it takes to get on board with it. But, you know, we have Verizon services in the town that we use, and I think Verizon does have something that's similar to FirstNet. I'm not sure what it is.
I'll take the lead on Starlink, I'll figure that out,
It's expensive.
it is.
Yeah.
Don't jump to conclusions.
I researched this.
What about the beat cards? I mean, did the lady ever get back with you on any information on the beat cards for the officers? or-
You were gonna,
Oh,
what
okay.
is it, Bank of America?
So we have to go through them. So I can reroute that information through email to you all if you want me to take action on that.
There is a federal program that allows you to take priority in the phone system, but
We're already on board with that.
to get started.
All of what he's talking about, it's a federal program. It's called, GETS.
Can you spell that, please?
GETS, I believe it is.
Yeah, it's the government emergency.
Something like that.
communications
But
system.
every one of our officers
Service.
on it. And we do get priority on those cell phones through the federal government. I don't know exactly which service they route it through, but we are participants of it, our department is, so we do have that capability, so that's why I'm not sure what FirstNet would link all first responders in this area that participate, like the fire department. See, when it gets, you have to subscribe to it to be able to get it.
It's a different system. They complement each other.
So that's kind of like the conversation about GPT and the new AIs that are out there. And I'll have to give you all a presentation on it, but the differences in how this AI is actually encompassed in the same.
So town count, Javier and Melody have this on their cell phones. Yeah.
So they get priority.
They get priority.
Nice.
I want to say,
You see?
did you see it? I want to say it takes it. Yeah, anyway, the other thing is when you're talking about comms as an asset, I mean, anybody can buy a Starlink. And a lot of people, I'm sure there's something in town that has. So it's a question of, do we have a terminal available that we could use to dedicate for the town? So at least you would have one chief, you could run background, you could pull records if you want through, at least you have that ability to give us that to communicate to with email and text. So it's just, and maybe out of this disaster style, consider some of the more effective program for local government.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, like with these charts, these are expensive through the company to get them printed. And the gentleman from Alaska actually did this for the rural communities. So what happens is their small communities fill this out paper-wise. They send the paperwork into their VDEM equivalent, and then they print